and so I'd like to give some thanks to him and then move on straight away to the next session, the plenary session on Internet of Things. I'm going to hand over to Martin Botterman, a very, very capable moderator who will guide you through the next session, and I'm looking forward to it.
You're a hard act to follow, but we'll try that, and we have an excellent panel for that. And before we kick off the panel, we have the honor and pleasure of having Ross Lejeunesse here to share a view of how life could be in 2026. I think you'll recognize a lot of the hints the Commissioner gave, and some of it may stand still in 2026, and companies realize they need trust. And that will be well expressed in your contribution, I think. So, floor is yours.
Thanks very much. I think to understand where the Internet of Things is going, it's important to first understand where we are and how we got here. And I'd like to start with a short story. It was a Sunday 2 years ago, and I was over at my sister's house. She lives a couple miles away from me in Washington, D.C. We were, spending the day together. We were watching television. There was a football game on TV. And my niece, Eleanor, who was 3 years old at the time, she's not a really big fan of football. So she walks up to the flat screen, and she puts out her hand, and she swipes the screen to get the football match off the screen. And, she saw that screen, and she assumed it was like any other smartphone or tablet. She's seen me on my mobile device. She's seen her parents. I'm sure you all have very similar stories. For those of you who have kids at home. So she assumed that it was just like any other screen, and in a way, she is absolutely right. And now compare that view of the world to my parents, Eleanor's grandparents. And every time I show them a new food delivery app or video chatting on my smartphone, they respond with this sense of wonder and amazement because it's still so electrifying and new to them. But for Eleanor and her generation, it's really just the way things are and the way things will always be. For them, there won't be a pre- and a post-internet age. There'll just be a connected world with connected devices, and then there'll be history. There won't be new media and old media. There'll just be what's online, and there'll be history. Traditional workplaces and modern workplaces just be a thing, a distinction without meaning. It's going to be about connected workers. But I don't want to give you another statement or speech about why the internet is revolutionary, because I know you get it. What I'd like to talk about instead is where that revolution is headed. Let's see if I can make this work. There we go. Now, for the past 20 years, a focus of the internet revolution has been these screens. The PC that in the 80s and 90s were largely used for word processing, number crunching, basic things in the office and at home, maybe a little bit of gaming. Those screens suddenly became gateways to an entire world of information and to an incredible number of people in that world. Smartphones then put all of that information and connections into the palm of our hands, and even smart TVs like the one that my niece swiped are giving you access to virtually unlimited entertainment. So the internet is already everything and everywhere, and if that's the case, then it makes sense for it to be an ever-increasing part of our lives and part of the tools that we use on a daily basis. Think about all those regular, everyday objects you have around the house that are already being made over for the internet. There are thermostats, smoke detectors, baby monitors. There are even frying pans now that are connected to the internet. And we know already what happens when all these objects get connected to the net. You have lights that you can control from across the bedroom or from across the world. I just use my Nest device to increase the temperature at my house in Washington, D.C., because my partner is now on a business trip and no one's home. Window shades that are timed to the sunrise and sunset. Cars that unlock automatically as you get closer, and you can use your mobile device to find them in a parking garage, which is a perennial problem I have. All these devices are talking to each other in smart ways so that our lives can be made easier and better. And just like it's hard to imagine our lives without smartphones, I think in 10 years we're going to feel very much the same way about these smart devices. Now, they're also going to be more secure and protect your privacy better than ever before, and here's why. When we think about the early days of the internet, in the 90s and the 2000s, it was all about creating content and websites, and that brought clicks and page views, and that brought venture capital money, about views and users. Everyone was moving at the speed of light to create platforms and sites that users went to and relied upon. And then honestly, what happened is that too many of us were hacked, too many of us had credit card numbers swiped, passwords were phished, and we're victims of all sorts of malicious tools and viruses that exposed our personal info to thieves. Now, the race has been on for a while now to make the internet as secure as it has been robust. Privacy and security, as you've heard from many of the conversations we've had today, have really risen to the top of the technology agenda. Encryption is a hot topic of debate. And now as we shift to IoT, the privacy and security lessons that were hard learned in the early days of the internet are giving us the right context and frame of mind as we move forward with these smart devices. Security and privacy aren't an afterthought with the Internet of Things. They're the first thought of developers, of businesses, of government, civil society, technologists. When it comes to the Internet of Things, quite simply, security and privacy are baked into the devices, from blueprint to assembly line to the actual use by consumers. And the same goes for the technology that will connect these smart devices. Now, I know some of these devices may sound a little gratuitous or unneeded. You may have been in someone's house where there are internet-enabled everything, devices all over, smart locks, smart toothbrushes, smart egg containers. I mean, I'll say this, though, that as these devices start to talk to each other and get smart, and then they get smarter, and they make our lives better, and as the benefits outweigh the costs, internet-enabled devices will win. If it's the same price as a regular water filter, there will be many of us who will want to have a water filter that senses when the filter needs to be replaced and then securely connects online to reorder automatically. Some of us will not want that world, but many of us will. When technology is executed, really with the best interests of the consumer in mind, it usually wins over legacy products. There we go. So take the washing machine. In the future, it will activate washing at the most energy efficient time. It will learn the best cycle to wash by sensing which clothes are in the drum. It'll order detergent if you're running out based on tracked usage. It'll be connected online to do efficiency and safety checks. It'll match your arrival times with those energy efficient times so that the clothes are ready when you arrive at home. Now, this is great not only for users, that sounds like something I would really appreciate, but that's also great for the environment. And all of this will be done securely and with privacy as priority number one. So I'm sure you're wondering, that's all great. I kind of knew that already. I suspected it was coming. What is Google doing with the Internet of Things? Now, our IoT focus really can be categorized into three pillars. First, through partnerships, we're working to selectively develop devices and services that inspire and make the best use of the possibilities of IoT. Second, we're working on systems and protocols that are open and interoperable and focusing on developers so that everything works together seamlessly. And then finally, third part, is we're supporting research with partners. Now let me talk a little bit about partnerships. At last year's I/O, which is our product showcase conference, we announced a connected fabric project called Project Jacquard. And we're going to show you a little bit about this in a sec. The concept is to weave conductive yarn into the fabric of everyday objects like clothes and furniture to transform them into interactive devices and surfaces. I'm going to show you a video and you can take a look.
What I find fascinating about textiles is the structure of textiles. It's the same to the structure of touchscreens, which we're using in everyday mobile devices and tablets. That means that if you just replace some of the threads in textiles with conductive threads, you should be able to weave the textile, which can recognize a variety of simple touch gestures, just like any normal touch panel you have on a mobile phone. So if you can hide or weave interactivity and input devices into the materials, that will be the first step to making computers and computing invisibly integrated into the objects and materials and clothing. So this is exciting to me. The challenge of creating jacquard yarn was to create yarn that is highly conductive and at the same time scalable, which means it could be used on industrial weaving machines everywhere in the world.
For textile designers or fashion designers or furniture designers, it is interesting because it's something you are very familiar with. It's just textile. We made the yarn very thin and feels so natural, so it looks like just normal yarn. The only thing that's different is it's conductive. We work with textile designers from all over the world, and it's really interesting to see what kind of possibilities that we can have. Could be visible, very obviously, like it's here, but also can be totally invisible. So we're creating possibilities by combining different way of weaving technique, and that's totally up to designers to choose, and it's up to their creativity.
We're trying to shrink down all the components down to the size of a button, and ultimately this will be something that's so small we can embed into the manufacturing process. So the users won't even see it or feel it inside the garment.
The idea that jacquard is an interface that is blended into the clothing that we wear, that has an implication in the way that you would use services, products, applications, and anything that we do through our devices. It's somehow getting the technology out of the way and making interactions more natural and more seamless.
In terms of what the technology can do, it's really up to the user and to the designers, and we expect that users can reconfigure it as much as they want to. Software development and fashion design often don't exist in the same place, so we're hoping to make it very simple for each of those parties to collaborate, and we're hoping to provide both software and hardware knowledge and components to make those collaborations very easy.
We like to think that we have these iconic products that haven't changed much, but the world is changing. So I think jacquard presents a great opportunity for brand, for design, to open a door to the future.
In tailoring, we use methods that have been used and not changed for 200 years. So when something new comes along, it's really exciting. What's amazing about the project is that I don't have to have any knowledge about the electronics and how it works. So let's see what we can create with it.
Jacquard is a blank canvas for designers and developers. We are just at the beginning, and we are really excited to see what people are going to do with it.
So you'll be able to get directions, make a phone call, play music by touching or gesturing pockets or the fabric itself. Imagine riding your bike and touching your sleeve and asking for whatever song you feel like listening to at the moment to begin playing, and that happening within a matter of seconds. And like you saw in the video, we're working with partners around the world, Factory in Japan, a design studio also in Japan, our Google Creative Lab in London, Levi Strauss in San Francisco, Taylor's in Savile Row in London. Now, another really cool and interesting idea we're working on is urban mobility. Over half the world's population live in cities and urban areas, and over the next 30 years, 2 billion more people are expected to become city dwellers. Civic leaders and urban planners are thinking carefully about the challenges associated with such incredible growth, like avoiding already overstressed public transit infrastructure, reducing traffic congestion, other issues that we already deal with on a daily basis. And we're interested in these questions too. We've been helping people navigate urban areas and avoid traffic jams for many years already. And that's why Google's Better Mobility team is partnering with the EU and US cities in experiments in each to figure out how location history might help cities find ways to reduce congestion, improve safety, and cut down on the money spent on infrastructure. And we have some incredible partnerships to do that as well. In Stockholm, we're working with the Royal Institute of Technology to reduce the number of tunnel closures on the Södra Länken, which is the second longest urban motorway tunnel in Europe, to improve travel times for drivers. In the Netherlands, we're working with the Netherlands Organization for Applied Scientific Research to see whether it's possible to reduce the reliance on expensive physical road sensors for information about traffic flows. We're also working with major research institutions and transportation planning groups in Denmark and the United States. We're excited by the promise that these initial projects have shown in meeting the challenges of urban mobility, and we're planning on taking these partnerships to new levels in the months and years ahead. Now, on the importance of IoT being open and interoperable, we're really interested in making the systems, the protocols, and the communications that are going to underpin an Internet of Things that is open, interoperable, safe, and reliable, and to make it easier for developers, any developer, to develop for the Internet of Things. And here are two examples. First is called Eddystone. Now, I'm sure you all are familiar with beacons. They're one-way communications devices that are only useful when nearby devices receive their signals and turn them into some sort of useful context. For example, a beacon can notify you of the arrival time of the next bus when you're waiting at the bus stop. Now, the possibility of beacons are huge. Beacons can, for example, navigate vision-impaired people to their destinations independently, be used for things like automatic hotel check-in, traffic estimation, and on and on. Now, in order to make the most of these possibilities, we published Eddystone, which is the language that a beacon uses to broadcast its messages into the world. And we're making it available to anyone and everyone to use so that they can improve it, first of all, and then use it in their designs and development. And the format is also cross-platform, so developers can use it, Eddystone supporting beacons not just on Android, but on iOS and any other platform that supports BLE, which is Bluetooth Low Energy. We're also enabling developers and industries to develop connected products with Brillo and Weave. Brillo is basically a lighter version of Android, where the ultimate goal is giving users an ecosystem of connected devices that's open and full of choice, even in an ecosystem of devices that don't have screens. And Weave is a communications protocol that lets these devices talk to each other. It's enabled by default on Brillo, on the Brillo operating system, and works on both iOS and Android, which again makes it easier for everyone to contribute devices and apps in a way that's cohesive and interoperable. Again, part of the story here is partnerships. We are partnering with companies all around the world: Intel, NXP, Semiconductors, Marvel, Imagination Technologies, Qualcomm. And we're going to work with partners, additional partners, to explore ways to support connected devices broadly across the Internet of Things space. And finally, just a word on research. With academic partners at Stanford, Carnegie Mellon, Cornell, and other universities, we're seeking solutions and approaches to the biggest practical issues. This is where the concerns around privacy, security, ease of use, and development of open standards is going to occur. Now, partnerships, again, are a key to this success. As I mentioned, we're partnering with industries, academics, developers all around the world and here in the EU to explore the possibility of IoT, and we see already truly amazing products in the pipeline coming to life, with and without us. IBM and GE are working on sensors that they'll put on jet engines, power generators, farm equipment, so that they can better control and monitor them. Nearly 50 companies are working on fabrics like what we just saw that can monitor people's health or even cool and heat them when necessary. And that, I really think, will be the model we see over the next 10 years. Partnerships across many different sectors that will reinvent traditional industries and objects into next-generation technologies. It's not a race, but really a huge opportunity for everyone. And imagine what the world might look like in 10 years. The way that the Internet revolutionized screens, well, it'll do the same thing for almost every device in our lives, from the simple thermostat to the automobile. Now, let me quickly just talk more about a couple key issues, very important principles that we adhere to at Google. The first is that we need to develop a healthy ecosystem for IoT. We want to support the creation of an ecosystem that allows everybody, as I've said many times, to deploy, develop, share, and market products and devices. It's the same model that drove the Internet to success. It's the same model that drove Android to success: open. Now, right now, the IoT landscape is highly fragmented and confusing to navigate for developers and consumers alike. And there are several things we need to do to help a healthier ecosystem evolve. The first, as I said, is to promote interoperability in a way that does not constrain innovation. Second, we need to embrace pan-regional and global approaches to minimize nation-specific constraints and regulations. The third, we need to adopt a harms-based, common-sense approach to regulation to enable innovation and evolution while providing appropriate protection for consumers. We must focus on preventing malicious and discriminatory uses of data that may be acquired from devices, rather than focus on criminalizing or punishing the data itself. And the fourth, we think that governments have an opportunity, in fact, a responsibility to lead by example. As public infrastructure and government services start to embrace IoT, policymakers should use this as an opportunity to model best practice behaviors and ensure that legacy policies don't stand in the way of IoT applications and development. The second major issue is, of course, privacy and security. I know you've heard me say a little bit about this already, but they really must take center stage with IoT. And the way that we look at it, a couple, again, key principles which should be prioritized. First, users should be given clear and easy data management and controls over digital identity, the data per sensor, per account, per product, and per home. Devices must ask users first before they start sharing any data with other devices, and we must assign device ownership and access rights to these things, these devices, and the data they collect. The good news is really that we have been learning from the past. Many of the IoT's primary challenges, privacy challenges, are extensions of those we already face on the web and on mobile today. So conceptually, we're not starting from scratch. But we need you, which is one of the reasons why I'm here. As much as IoT is exciting for consumers, for the environment, for the public safety, and for all of us, and for ways, honestly, that we haven't even thought of yet, it's really everyone's job to be advocates for the importance of security, to be advocates for the importance of privacy, and to be advocates at the same time for the robust ecosystem that will let IoT thrive. Now, there's going to be a lot of wonder and amazement from consumers and the press, and that's fantastic. But we also have to be mindful of the important underpinnings of these new platforms. We have to promote them and educate the public about them at the same time. And once we do, I know we really will have a very bright future with the internet in our screens, our cars, our clothing, and really everywhere it can make our lives better. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Ross, for this view ahead that seems to be so close in some ways and some far away in others. Please sit here. For the sake of time, we will continue immediately.